Hi, I'm Terry Arnold, and welcome to Talk IBC. And I am so thrilled to have one of my favorite doctors at MD Anderson with me today. And because I know I'm going to butcher her name, I'm going to ask her to say it, but we affectionately call her Dr. Ozzy. Please pronounce your name.
Good morning, Terry. Thank you so much for having me and having me in your living room. How fun it is to do this. But my name is Azadeh Nasrazadani, which my parents thought was an awesome idea to name me that in the 80s in, Louisiana, because why not? But for hopefully obvious reasons, I go by Ozzy, Dr. Ozzy, which my friends and colleagues affectionately call me. So you are welcome to call me as you wish.
Well, like I said, I just got stuck on the Dr. Ozzy, and I hear that so much now. I don't get to hear your full, beautiful name, but I'm so glad to have you here. And for those of you who don't know you, you are a clinical oncologist researcher at MD Anderson in Houston, Texas. I'd like to have you tell them a little bit about your background, how you landed at MD Anderson, about your family, anything you want to share, but also kind of always like to know why you picked the tough world of inflammatory breast cancer, because that is not an easy apple to peel, shall we say. So, where would you like to start?
That's a pretty loaded question, but let's see. I'll try to organize my thoughts in a way that answers all that. But how I kind of started off. Well, my dad's a scientist. He's a university professor, although in engineering. And so when I was growing up, I thought that every little girl had to grow up, go to college, get a PhD, and then become a princess. So that's what my trajectory essentially was. So I actually
Right.
didn't want to be a doctor in the beginning. I wanted to be a scientist. But somehow, life shows you your path. I ended up, I did my bachelor's of biochemistry at UT Austin. Hook 'em horns, I have to make a plug there. Um,
Yeah.
and then doing rotations in graduate school, I kind of fell into a breast cancer research lab with Carla Vandenberg at the College of Pharmacy at UT Austin. And I really resonated. I really found that that was what I was meant to do. And, I have to say with at the time I was like a 21-year-old with a, whatever the frontal development of a 21-year-old is at the time. But it really shaped a big part of who I was. And I really felt like I was doing something that mattered. It was a lot of course, bench experiments, perhaps we should talk about animal models, but bench research. And my project specifically focused on advanced breast cancer, specifically underlying signal transduction pathways. And really, to say it simply, um, with the biology, aggressive biology in these breast cancers. And it was just so fascinating to know that your body, to totally nerd out, to know that your body can do these things. And it really gives you an appreciation for what our bodies are capable of. Essentially, cancer cells being kind of these, to quote Dr. Mukherjee, and was it one of his books? I hope he forgives me, but he said something to the nature of cancer cells are scrappy versions of ourselves, and that's just so spot on, right? So just being really fascinated by that. But as I was getting closer to defending my thesis and graduating, what I really kind of found myself gravitating towards was trying to go more in the clinical trial space and kind of going from that bench to bedside. And us being in Austin, every year that really afforded us a chance to go to San Antonio. And I'm telling you, as a grad student, when you're like stuck in the lab and you smell like agar and like, I don't know, like all kinds of, lab things, and you get to go to see all these cool things happening, like really clinical trials talking about hundreds and thousands of women. You see advocates, and it really just shifts your understanding of what's happening and what it really means to be at the bench and where things get started. So I have to see that that really inspired me, and it really kind of changed my trajectory. So that's why I knew. It was like, I want to be a breast cancer doctor. And the reason for that being that all the jobs I wanted to pursue, specifically for, being in the clinical trial world, necessitated having an MD. Interestingly enough, like, you could have a PhD, but you needed to have that MD. So really, that's what I decided to do. I said, okay, I want to be a breast cancer oncologist, and that's what I did. So at the time, my husband was in see how I ended up in Pittsburgh. I'm trying to make that link now. So I applied to a couple of different programs, well, med school and then for residency fellowship. I did a physician scientist pathway, which was more geared towards people who were more, academically inclined. And my husband still at the time, and still my current husband, he
Still
was
your husband?
yeah, that was very successful marriage. We're good. He's
Good.
he was in Pittsburgh, and so it was very desirable for me to want to go there. They have a wonderful residency program, and there was a combination internal medicine hemonc residency fellowship, physician scientist research pathway. And so it was a wonderful experience. I spent about 7 years or so roughly at Pittsburgh. I had wonderful mentors. I got to work with Steffi Oosterreich, Adam Brufsky, really amazing people who continue to help invest in me and to help me be who I want to be. But as I had my second kid, and as things happen, and as career choices, and just with family, all kinds of, for a variety of reasons that I think, variety of reasons, looking for, what the next step was. So at the time I was a clinical instructor in Pittsburgh, and actually Dr. Tripathi reached out to me and said, "Hey, I heard you're looking for a job." And at the time I had been also talking to Jenny Tang at Methodist, and just was really excited to come back to Texas. So a big believer in destiny, and I think it was just so wonderful to get to meet so many amazing people, and have the opportunity to come back to MD Anderson, which I just really thought was in my wildest dreams. So it has been really an honor and a privilege to get to work with so many amazing people here, being at MD Anderson. But to kind of answer your question, why inflammatory breast cancer, my as part of my research, a big part of my project was focusing really on the really bad cancers, the really bad breast cancers being essentially triple negative. And some of the projects I'd worked on with Dr. Brufsky, one of them specifically was looking at long-term survivors of metastatic triple negative breast cancer, which, as you know, are really rare birds, and trying to move that project forward, although it hit COVID and other not fun challenges. But all that to say is that I really wanted to pursue something that was really tough, like really wanted to do
Mhm.
something that was like really worth doing. And as hard as it is to see patients deal with these things, it's knowing that we're doing this together, and kind of trying to figure out how can we raise the bar. And once again in my life, I kind of fell into that opportunity, as I fell into, a breast cancer lab so many years ago with Dr. Vandenberg. Dr. Wayno, very well known to Wayno, just an amazing person, researcher, physician. He was one of my mentors, and how incredibly grateful I am for that. But somewhat shortly after I joined, he was offered the position to be the cancer center director in Hawaii. And so he was moving on. And with that, there was going to be a big void in clinical needs, and other specific clinical needs, and members of the IBC program. So Dr. Valera members, they approached me and they said, "Hey, I think this is going to be a really great opportunity. It's completely up to you. We realize this is a really hard gig. Would you like to do this?" And it just felt like an amazing opportunity. And somehow I felt like, oh my gosh, this is my chance. I had actually been recruited to do more hormone receptor positive breast cancers, which, in many cases can be resistant and aggressive. And I had actually spent a lot of time doing research on invasive lobular carcinoma, which you talked about a little bit in the past. And so it's kind of carving my niche in that regard, which we still continue to do here, as we're gearing up also to open a center of excellence, which I'll plug a little bit later. But all that to say is that I really felt like, oh my gosh, this is going to really help me kind of go back to my roots of what I really wanted to do. So it has just been an amazing.
I'm gonna interrupt you there for a second so you can
That's
catch your
what was
breath.
that.
And I will say, I remember when, excuse me, I got a frog with her. When Wayno told me he was going to be leaving, I'm like you just said, it's going to leave a big void, because he had his fingers in a lot of things, and was very well loved on top of it. And also, he brought a unique element. As a two-time cancer survivor, his patients really connected with him. And so there was a little pushback in the IBC community about him leaving. And I remember saying, but wait, there's more. Wait till you meet Dr. Ozzy. She's amazing. And he talked to me about you. And I was able to pass that along to people who were concerned. And I can tell you, I've got nothing but really positive feedback. And they were nervous because you had some big shoes to fill, but I think you filled them well. And I also appreciate something I'm hearing from you is the passion about doing something hard. Everybody that I know is in the IBC world is doing something hard. And one thing I say this all the time is I want patients to understand what your life is like, because I know when I got involved in the breast cancer world, I assumed academia just literally, and I say this all the time, gave you guys a bucket of money and said, here, go study it.
Oh
I
man,
had
no,
no
we
idea how hard you had to fight for grants, how much time, how hard it was, how the limitations on what you could even apply for, or how many times you could apply. That's why we started the IBC Network Foundation. To our main goal is to fund research, was because I saw the challenges you guys are up against. Because when I felt like I needed to do something to help, people said, well, you could pay people's light bills or do whatever. I thought, no, community can do that, churches can do that. But getting into the research part is where I wanted to give support because that's where I saw there was a huge void. So I would like you, now that we're here and you're trying to do all these big things, to talk about, what you're seeing that's a hurdle, what's an obstacle, how patients can help, what is coming down the pipe for patients to know about to take care of themselves medically, because you were really in that clinical space. And there's a lot that you want to do. So I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that they found you. I'm glad you're wanting to do the hard stuff because I tell people this all the time. Academia is not private practice. You guys, look at all the education you got. You guys will be making double, triple bank in
You
academia or pharma.
can,
You can
very
make more
true.
money
Yes.
working at a Botox clinic, I promise.
That is also unfortunately true, but and I know this well. So thank you so much, Sherry, for bringing this up. I'm so glad that you did, and it's really funny that you say that. I think it's kind of a big mysterious box with regard to kind of academia and research in general. And even my own husband, every single day in internship fellowship, he would say private practice, right? Private practice, right? So he still continues to wonder and try to comprehend my career choices. But he and I joke, he gets it. But just to kind of take a step back and talk a little bit about in very simplistic terms of what that means and how we are distinguished. So in private practice, really that means that physicians really focus on clinical care, which is a lot more straightforward. Kind of once you know how to treat patients and what the standards are, and of course staying up to date on things that are changing, you're good. You know what to do. You know how to take care of people, and it's boom, boom, boom. But for and and appropriately or rather as people presume, yes, that is something that can be very well compensated to varying degrees, particularly in private practice. But for academic physicians, in order to justify not spending your entire time on clinical obligations, you actually have to find a way to support yourself and to buy that time. So the hospital or entity that pays you can allow you to do that, because otherwise they can be, that's not, of course it's all about helping people, but they're employing you for a reason. They want you to take care of business. So how that funding comes
Hey,
about.
but cancer, I'm going to interrupt here because cancer treatment is not so straightforward. I mean, it might be what they say, the simple cancers. Okay, you do this, 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 but when you're in a place like, MD Anderson or Dana-Farber or places that are bringing in the harder ones, where like especially IBC, it's constantly morphing and changing, and you're like, whoa, that treatment plan works on 85% of the patients. It's not working on you. It's not like you're just given a prescription for a cold. You are
Yeah, exactly.
constantly.
You need to know that there are new things coming, but where did those things come from? They come from somewhere, right? So we really have to foster and really nurture those efforts that are coming from all the way down from, the bench, the research to, the different varying degrees of, drugs being studied and where all that happens. But that really requires academic efforts. And so to kind of, build on what I was saying is, it's very surprising that even to do something that one would think would be important, there's not a whole lot of, it doesn't make a ton of money to do that, because many times, for anyone who's been in grad school or done research, you realize that for every 20 failed assays, you're going to get that one result that you can kind of squint at and think, okay, this is what we need to be propelling forward. It's beyond just having a good idea to start with. What are the good ideas, where the knowing, having the sense to know, or the skill, the art of knowing where the important questions lie. Funding it is, it's a whole arena. And I remember one time I was trying to explain to my to my son, actually last year, I was trying to put in a grant, and my poor children, that they've only ever known, you need to go to sleep, mommy has more work to do. And I was trying to explain to him, mommy's putting in this grant, and he's like, oh, what's that? And I was trying to explain to him what I don't know why I was trying to explain to a 7-year-old what it means to put in an NIH grant and to ask for money. But I said, it means that mommy is asking the government for money so I can do research, because he's all excited about being a scientist now. And he's like, oh, you can do that? They'll do it. I'm like, yeah, but it's really hard work. You have to prove that, what you have to, put something in, you have to, what you're proposing has to make sense. And he basically said, oh, so you can do that and just spend all your money on toys? It's like, oh, wow, absolutely not. You have to justify every cent of what you're asking for. But I think
Yeah.
one thing that people don't realize is that It actually is, it's very hard work because it's increasingly has become very difficult to fund research. And because it's just for a variety of reasons, socioeconomically, but the political climate and everything, um, where our priorities lie as far as what we're funding. But there's just not a ton of money for research, and it's very expensive. It's not just about the agents, it's the space, it's the people, making sure that you're within the regulations and ethically doing all the right things. The so it may be very surprising to people to know what those costs are, and the fact that indeed it pays significantly less than, were you to basically do just private practice.
One thing that got me going was I met a researcher, and I hate repeating myself on things, but maybe somebody will hear this in relation to you that hadn't heard before. Is a researcher showed me a paper, and he said I got a perfect score, but they wrote on here they're going to pay if, and what it was is they pay if they still have it at the end of all the other things they paid, and I found out that rare diseases get put at the bottom of the list. And so even though we had a perfect score, he didn't get the funding because they want to go for the bigger bang for the buck. So I want people to understand that so they can get behind the researchers because we are trying to help ourselves. I mean, I am standing on the shoulders. My wellness is because of people like you before me and patient advocates before me who those essays led to something that made me well. Now, I know people got the same treatment I got and didn't be well. So there's something unknown in our bodies that we're not hitting maybe what they knew hit my targets, but didn't hit that next person next to me with the same exact diagnosis because there's some unknown factor we want to get to. So that's where I get very passionate about what's going on in the science. So we're recording this in June of 25, and there's a lot of unknowns right now. So because they're unknowns, we're just going to leave that alone. But can you talk about some science that you think is merging that you would like to share with our patients that listen or and their families that listen, or also just to let people see there is science coming? Because some people think science has come to a screeching halt, and I don't think that's really fair for them to feel that way, but they don't know what's going on.
For sure, and it's easy to feel discouraged or feel like things aren't, are not moving fast enough. I can say that it is overall an exciting time to see so many approvals and things happening faster, but it's still the unmet needs remain, and it's just not fast enough. But as far as things to be excited about and things to kind of know, things are happening. I can tell you, that aside from private practice and academic medicine, the pharmaceutical industry, they are going at a ridiculous speed. But the thing is, they're testing things all the time, and just because we don't see it, there are many things that don't quite meet the hurdles, and thus they're not pursued. But it's a really exciting time. In recent years, we have HER2, we have Trodelvy, other such things, and now we are talking more about these ADCs, the antibody drug conjugates. And I know that Dr. Lim, Abora Lim, she's working with multiple pharmaceutical companies and trying to push projects forward. We have trials opening for IBC patients, which is just really exciting.
I'm going to interrupt you real quick. Having you say the word trials open for IBC patients, you say that so casually. But for me as a patient, I remember back when I was diagnosed, and it was 17 years ago, they precluded us from being into the trials. So the fact that there's actually a trial written, not only that let us in, that are written for us. Can you slow down on that one for just a minute? Because
So
I don't
really
think you
exciting.
realize the listeners right now are cheering at that thought.
And we cheer with them. I think it is very challenging, as you know, in clinic when we see these very tough cases of wanting to do something beyond the standard agents. We still have this issue. We still have issues where many patients are excluded, and many times when we are able to participate in conversations, we are making a plug of always saying, "Hey, is there are IBC patients excluded? Can you explain why?" And sometimes you're successful at changing, the opinions of the powers that be, and sometimes you're not. But it is absolutely a big deal, and I think that as we're all appreciating that, yeah, even if it's increments of improvement, there is value there. And so that's kind of one way of being able to really convince people who have drugs or the support system as far as like funding whatnot to be able to do that. So it is a big deal, and that is not lost upon us either.
Now, what do you see coming down the pipe that you feel hopeful for treatment care for someone with inflammatory breast cancer?
So I don't know that I'll talk about a specific drug, but I can tell you one really amazing thing that we've been able to do, which has been thank you to every single IBC patient specifically who has been a part of our registry, is it has really allowed us with strength in numbers. So what was it, about 2 years ago, remember Terry, we had our milestone 1,000 patient event and how amazing that was. So if you think about,
Have a second to tell people about the milestone. What was that? Because
yes,
I
yes,
know I was patient number 97.
amazing. Yeah. I thought you were patient 10.
I was patient number 97.
Oh, that's amazing. So just for our listeners, registries, specifically like, at least like research registries, are basically kind of like databases that allow us to collect information on a select population. And so within the IBC department, we have this IBC registry, and we collect a very comprehensive amount of information, samples, you know, very comprehensive. But what that allows us to do is it allows us to, instead of having kind of a smattering of, case reports here and there, things in literature, is really put everything together and take a step back. So roughly about 2 summers ago, we got to our 1,000th patient that was enrolled into this IBC registry.
An incredible milestone, 1,000 patients.
Incredible.
It was years of work.
Years of work, and really, again, thanks to each patient for believing us and allowing us to use this information. But what it allowed us to do is not
I'm
put
again interrupting because one thing I tell people all the time, even if you're happy with the care that you're getting locally, try to get close to the research. Try to get your data
absolutely,
in there
absolutely,
because we don't know that our data is not shared.
yes,
And I tell people try to get close to the research project if you can in some way, even if you're doing things well, because it can matter. So continue on. So what
yes.
happened with your
No
1,000
promises, I have
patients?
promises, I promise. But it's just very exciting about that. But the nice thing is because then you don't put everyone in one big bucket. When you Google, look for prognosis of IBC, there are terrifying things on there. But that's because everyone is in one big scary bucket. But the truth of the matter is, at the end of the day, there are many different ways that we characterize breast cancer. It matters whether or not it's triple negative or HER2 positive or hormone receptor positive, and each one of those have distinct biology still. And so there are still things we need to understand of what's working, what's not working, and what is unique to each group so that we can justify the interventions we're trying to make. Yes, we want to be very aggressive, but you have to make sure that you're not over or under doing it for any one person. So what's been very interesting is it's been kind of allowing us to take that step back and really dive into the research, which has been a big part of what I've been able to do since kind of taking on that initiative. And one of the things that we're seeing that has been very startling, but yet not surprising considering what we see in clinic, is seeing the really surprisingly disproportionate rate of brain metastasis. And I think that's been something that has absolutely
That's
held our
man, that's my hot button,
yeah.
crazy hot button is that keeps me awake at night. And I've talked to Wendy Wood about this many times that we see women going along, they're beautifully well, and then all of a sudden they've got full blown brain mets. And
Yes.
that's what keeps me awake at night. And she said that's what keeps her awake at night too.
Absolutely. And it's very hard to see that. I can think of multiple people that come in front of my eyes that I think of. And really just there not being a good way of being able to predict that at present and to prevent. And really what we're doing is really heavily reliant on local therapies as far as radiation or surgery when possible. So that is a major unmet need and it's absolutely terrifying. Patients who are getting PCRs, right? They're having complete the cure, achieving cure essentially. And by all means, having, favorable prognostic features, we are still falling into this and really not knowing. It's a very dark area. So that specifically has been a really big interest for me. And especially in the past, since that time when we came to, report on this, has been a lot of focus on how can we do better specifically to prevent that from happening.
Well, and one thing I want to say here, if someone's listening to this and they've got brain mets, I don't want them to think that they're toast, shall we
Oh,
say,
yes,
because I know if I was first diagnosed and someone said, I knew that cancer could go from the breast to the lung or breast to the bone, but IBC behaves so differently. Sometimes it goes straight brain, and that would scare the devil out of me. I've seen amazing things. I've seen women be perfectly well after metastasis to the brain. And so
yes,
I don't want people to ever think there's not hope and give up. But
yes.
again, what we're seeing is women are doing well, 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 and all of a sudden there's this massive.
Yes.
movement
And I
into the
think what we're
brain.
trying to say is it's very discouraging because otherwise you really want to kind of give everyone that optimal outcome. But those are things that it's we won't downplay, right? It is discouraging to see something involve an area that is so sensitive. But please, for all the listeners, absolutely that is correct. There's many things that are done and can be done, but it's just a matter of kind of wanting to make sure that we are being doing as much as we can to kind of give you the rest of your life back, right? And that's a little bit harder when you have something that requires a little more stuff to happen.
So what do you see coming down the pike that people should be paying attention to? And also, I'm gonna hit you with a couple of questions. What would you like? Okay, obviously, patients' first job is getting well and taking care of themselves. But if
Yeah.
someone has the bandwidth along the way to help or do or be involved in advocacy, I'd like you to tell them, what's coming down the pipe to be excited about, and what can they do? And you are very welcome to put in a plug for MD Anderson's Boot Walk, which is this fall. You're very welcome to put in a plug for they're going to do a town hall. I want people to get as close to research as possible. It doesn't mean they have to end their local relationships, but we are all doing better because of someone before us. And so I think it's very natural that we can find some kind of way to pay it forward at some level. So what's coming down you're happy about, and what do you want people to know about in other areas?
I think building on the success of drugs like Enhertu and Trodelvy, it's been really exciting to see, especially clinically, we have patients who kind of do really poorly on many chemotherapies, but somehow seem to have a very good response to this mechanism, which has been very reassuring, and it's been very exciting of, being able to offer these things. So I'm very excited. I know working with our phase 1 team at MD Anderson, they have a lot of these types of ADCs and just nationally. So I'm really excited about that, specifically of knowing that we have a new class, not just, before hormone blockers or HER2 positive, directed agents or immunotherapy. But this really has become its own kind of thing. And the fact that for whatever reason now, while we continue to understand the biology of IBC, this seems to be very effective. And so that I'm very excited about. As far as our listeners, I want to encourage you, just number one, it doesn't mean that you have to, start, calling every congressman or, all do really crazy things, which if you do, we would love it. But even just as a first step, I want people to appreciate the value and the efforts of research. Please at least just be open to knowing that the research matters. It's what eventually makes the difference down the line. So there is value there, and to just acknowledge that. But even having a voice, your voice matters. We want to hear from you. We want to do all this together, and as we do it together, we're stronger together. But being a part of initiatives like the Boot Walk and standing together, it's hard to go through these things, and so it's very it's wonderful to get to come together at these events like the Boot Walk. We really get to boast about having one of the most successful teams, IBC Wranglers. We have so much fun. And it really speaks to the advocates, Terry, like you and everyone who rallies behind the team.
One thing about the boot walk, in case people don't know, MD Anderson started the boot walk. I think it's maybe been 10 years ago. And
Yes,
it's
this
a
year is
walk.
the 10th year this year. This year is the
It's
10th
what?
year.
Okay. Well, what they did when they started the boot walk, what it is, it's a walk that patients can participate, but also the different clinics can also put together a team. And the way it works is like I could decide to raise $500. It just goes to the greater good. But if a department makes a team, they have to raise at least 25,000, I believe, or maybe it's 20. I think it's 25. And if they raise that much, they can spend it on whatever they want into that. And I'm on the committee at the MD Anderson Boot Walk that helps decide how that money's spent. And it goes to things in that department that are really wonderful. And you can talk about that too. But people don't have to feel pressure to raise a lot of money. But I think the participation is extremely important. And we can walk with you and hang out with you. So I've got your
It's so
ear
fun.
for
It's so
it's about
fun.
an hour and a half walk and or maybe an hour walk. It's an honorary walk. But I want people to come and see because I think it's very exciting because one thing I get pushback from people sometimes they say, you know, they got the cure for that disease. They're just not telling you. And you're just being a sucker. And I'm sorry, I cannot believe it when I see the passion of you people and how hard you pour your lives into this. You cannot convince me there's a cure out there hidden. I just can't believe it. I can't. And everybody loves somebody, and somebody would let out the secret if it was really there. Because I remember one day going down a hall and I heard something fall and I heard a wail And I went running down the hall. And it was one of the doctors when one of her patients died. She literally collapsed and was in a puddle of tears. The love and the passion is real. So I always tell people, you don't know what you're talking about, but I would love to have them get close to you at the boot walk or come to one of the town halls or maybe consider being an advocate on a grant where they help write the letters to the government because you
That's
don't have it. So
wonderful
can we
idea.
talk about that? Because I
Absolutely.
tell you what, when you get to be an advocate on a grant, what people don't understand is you get to hang out with those researchers. You get to go to their lab. You get to hear what they're studying. And it is super crazy cool.
And it's very helpful because again, your voice means a lot, your support means a lot, and it helps reviewers say, oh, there's a face behind that. This matters to somebody. But absolutely, to speak to your point, patients who have IBC, their family members are going through the absolute it's most scary times, right, for that person. But what just on the other side of that, we are walking that journey with you and with every single patient. So day in and day out, it's it really does. Even though we're not the one with the diagnosis, we are part of that journey, and it's impossible not to be affected by that. So if there were some, magical cure out there, I cannot tell you how much it affects me when I see that young woman with a very aggressive diagnosis. I know what that trajectory is going to be like. I can tell you I hug my kids a lot harder every night when I get home, perhaps because I see it. It's constant. It's a constant reminder of the fact that that could be me at any minute. So I assure you, I don't think if there was something there, I don't think I could sleep at night knowing that I'm just watching people go through this. So yeah, hopefully people believe that that's not what's happening.
Um, one of the things about people don't understand about being an advocate on a grant, let's say like used to be you had to have one advocate to write a letter of support to the committee. And I hear that some of the grants are now wanting two advocates, which is hard enough to get one advocate. And so I'm an advocate on a lot of grants, and but we need more advocates, especially now that they're wanting more. And one thing patients don't realize is they don't want you to just have any advocate. They want somebody who's got skin in the game. They don't want it to be somebody who just cares about cancer. They want it to be an IBC patient. So that's again where their story can matter. They help explain the science to you. They help you write your letter, and then you can bring
It
in a
tells them
personal
that they're not
component.
alone,
And
right?
so
It shows them that they're a
and
person behind it.
sometimes those things then can lead to invitations. Like I've been a reviewer on the DoD, which is the Department of Defense. And what was a little scary for me as a layperson, I'm in a room with all these really important people, and my vote on that grant was equal. You really do have a place at the table. You're not just a token thing. So it can open up opportunities to be on the decision end of it too. But I think a lot of patients are hesitant to be an advocate on a grant because they think it's going to be over their head. Now, there's a lot of patients out there that are crazy smart with PhDs and are scientists themselves and things, but I want to really encourage people if they have interest to contact you because
Yes.
you can hold their hand and educate them.
It is, I agree. I think sometimes it's, people think for anything, they have to do like everything or nothing. But sometimes it really is a lot simpler than that. And but again, to your point, writing a letter, it's especially if there's templates or, mentors like yourself that could say, hey, this is really all they're asking. It's really just kind of putting weight against someone saying, hey, I'm there, I stand with this person. I believe in their research, it matters to me. So that's really that's simple. And so I think that for sure that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Well, is there anything you want to close with? I think you've
I
done
just
a great job covering a lot of things.
Terry, yeah, you and I talk fast, and we always have a lot we want to talk about because you and I are actually very passionate.
I know.
But thank you for having me in your home. And it was so wonderful to hopefully get to connect with listeners and just to kind of let them know that there's a lot happening. There's a lot happening behind the scenes, and it may not feel like it or look like it, but we never want to be dismissive. But we really are trying to kind of balance all the things and move the field forward. But it really can't happen without you. Each person's voice matters. Please continue to engage with us. Please come to the boot walk with us. Really, you are the reason this is happening and that we're stronger together. So I really hope that everyone realizes that and to really place the value in research and in their own voice. So thanks,
Well, I
Terry.
think that's an absolute perfect ending. Thank you, Dr. Ozzy, for being with me today. We're going to put this on Spotify and different Apple channels. It will be on YouTube too. We'll send you the link later and you can share it with your friends. And I
Absolutely.
hope you encourage other people to do podcasts with us because like you said, we're stronger together. And I appreciate
Absolutely.
that very much.
And I
So
look
I'm
forward to
going
not
to
only this, but the many more things that we have constantly talked about. So hopefully many more things to get to do together. the
Oh,
team.
I'm sure we could tease this down to a lot of topics. So thank you again. And
Yeah,
I'm going to stop recording now. And
great.
so let's give it a second.